Okay, so we're going to go through examples now. So we're going to start with examples of validity. So we're not focusing on reliability right now, we're just going to do stuff with validity. So the question is, a student researcher wanted to know if the scale they chose was valid or not. They took it to an expert on the topic and asked what kind of, and asked. So they took it to the expert on the topic and asked if it was valid or not. What kind of validity is this? You have face validity, convergent validity, predictive validity, and divergent validity. The answer is face validity, because they were turned into an expert. A student researcher is coming up with a new scale for measuring happiness. The student wants to make sure that the scale covers everything it is supposed to cover within the construct of happiness. They look at literature on the topic and ask an expert, what kind of validity are they checking? Face validity, convergent validity, predictive validity, or content validity? The answer is content validity. Because remember, content validity is concerned about making sure the way you measure your variable encompasses everything that's supposed to be encompassed with that variable. And the other giveaway is that they checked it with literature and an expert. A researcher comes up with a new measure of OCD. They want to check to make sure it is valid, so they collect data and correlate the new scale with an already existing scale. What kind of validity is being tested? Content, convergent validity, predictive validity, or divergent validity? The answer is convergent validity. So convergent validity, remember, is concerned about comparing your scale with an already existing scale to make sure it's valid, because the existing scale has been shown to be valid, and therefore if yours is positively correlated with it, then it is also valid. A researcher comes up with a new measure of OCD. They want to check to make sure it is valid, so they collect data and correlate the new scale with an already existing scale of self-esteem. If the OCD scale is valid, it will be negatively related to self-esteem. What kind of validity is being tested? That is divergent validity, because the OCD scale should go in the different direction than self-esteem. They are negatively related to each other, theoretically. If theoretically that should be the case, and if your data does not match that, then your new scale of OCD is probably not valid, because the existing scale of self-esteem has been supported and shown to be valid on various occasions. Therefore, if OCD does not have a negative relationship, then there's probably something wrong with your new scale of OCD. An employer administers an aptitude test for people to take as they apply for a job. Years after they chose a person to be hired, they assess the scores that the employee had years ago when they applied and compare scores to their current performance. What kind of validity is being assessed? Content, convergent, predictive, or divergent? So it is predictive. So one of the giveaways is the employment aptitude test. That's usually either predictive or concurrent. But then the thing that demonstrates that it's predictive is that they're using past scores to predict future performance. Yeah. And they're seeing if it's valid, if it measures future performance well. If it doesn't measure future performance well, then it doesn't have good predictive validity. Okay, now we're going to move on to a section of validity and reliability combined. So to best tell the difference between validity and reliability, be able to recognize each form of validity and reliability. That is the best trick I can say in terms of being able to distinguish between what is validity and what is reliability. Just learn the different types of each and remember which types are reliability and which types are validity. So true or false, in order to be reliable, a study must also be valid. That is false. Validity requires reliability, but reliability does not require validity. A researcher has 2 students rate behaviors of every participant. The scores match only 40% of the time. What is the issue? Validity or reliability? It is reliability, inter-rater reliability specifically. You have 2 students rating something and then comparing. And you're hoping that the 2 students came up with similar things because then it has good inter-rater reliability. But if they came to different conclusions while observing the behavior, whatever it was, then it does not have good inter-rater reliability. A researcher comes up with an aptitude test to measure applicants' ability. He first gives it to his current employees to make sure it measures what he wants to measure. He then gives it to job applicants. What was being assessed? Validity or reliability? That was validity, specifically concurrent validity. And as a side note, you should be able to produce examples of these different types of validity and reliability for the test. A researcher comes up with a new measure of depression and wants to check it for quality to make sure it covers everything it is supposed to cover. She looks at literature and asks an expert, what is being assessed? Validity or reliability? It is validity, specifically content validity. Because she looked at both the literature and asked an expert, and she was concerned about making sure that her measure of depression covered everything it was supposed to cover. That is content validity in a nutshell. A researcher administers a 5-item measure of anxiety. Afterwards, he looks at Cronbach's alpha to see if the items are related to each other. What is being assessed? Validity or reliability? It is reliability, internal consistency, or inter-item reliability. The giveaway with that is Cronbach's alpha. That is inter-item reliability thing. And then the other thing is looking at items, how they are related to each other. Thus, inter-item reliability or internal consistency. A researcher comes up with a new measure of aggression. To test the quality of the measure, she correlates it with an already existing measure of aggression. She found that the two measures were positively related. What did she assess? Validity or reliability? That is validity, specifically convergent validity. Actually, we'll just explain that a little bit more. So when you're comparing a new measure to an already existing measure and you're correlating them, then that's always convergent validity. You want to be able to distinguish between those who are happy and those who are unhappy. You use a measure of happiness and give it to your sample. You found that those who are high on the scale are in fact those who are happy, while those who are low are those who are unhappy. What is being assessed? Validity or reliability? That was validity, specifically divergent validity. So remember, divergent validity is concerned about being able to distinguish between different groups or different constructs, either or, different groups or different constructs. This is an example where they were distinguishing between different groups. However, divergent validity can also be used to distinguish constructs. So we use the example of like depression and self-esteem. They should diverge and be negatively correlated. So that's an example of constructs, being able to distinguish between constructs. Okay, that's the end.